everyone, it's Selena Banks. We're back today with your financial therapy for the week. I'm here again with friend of the show, Andy Cobb. Thanks for coming.
Everyone.
All right. Well, thanks as always for listening in. Today we are doing kind of a part 2 to our biases conversation. So last episode we talked a little bit about the differences between behavioral finance and traditional financial theory. And we talked about some of the biases that can really affect your financial decision making. Well, we're going to dig a little deeper into these biases, and I've grouped them, as you know, into the 4 horsemen of personal finance, these categories that I think really are the primary motivators and why some of these biases stick over time. And so the 4 horsemen are obligation, fear/denial, guilt/shame, and pride. They're real winners, all of them.
All of them.
So we're going to start. I'm going to put a little bit of a stories stat time. I like throwing out some things that kind of help us all get centered on what the message is. And then we'll talk about our biases and dig a little deeper into those. So the first thing is, I've been a financial planner for about 10 years and a financial coach for longer than that. And, I've seen a lot of high net worth individuals who could barely afford their mortgage. I get that it's Austin, but it's still
It is Austin.
But as a normal working family, these folks were making over $400,000 in income, which that's a lot of dollars.
Yes, it is.
And so to still be in a state where you can't pay your bills means that there's something else happening. It's not about the money. And I think it's really important that we highlight that this podcast is really for anybody making any amount of money, doing any kind of work, because recognizing that those clients are struggling with some of the same things that someone making $40,000 a year might be struggling with, that's a huge deal. So I throw that out there just because I want people to understand that these biases affect you no matter what, and that recognizing them is really half the battle. Like another instance, very recently, these things come up all the time. I had a dinner time discussion with some friends about pulling out of this market when it's down. And they felt 100% justified in doing so. It's like, well, I'm looking at it going like cringing almost because I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's like, okay, I understand the driving factor behind that.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And so we had a nice conversation, but it's, as a financial planner, it just led right back to this whole idea that, oh my God, people do not follow my advice. They will not follow my advice unless they understand where some of those feelings are coming from and start to change their behavior to meet a more rational sort of path forward for their finances instead of it being such an emotionally driven thing.
Well, emotionally emotionally charged humans, it's really hard to change that behavior.
Right.
It's because emotions, they lead you down all different paths.
All sorts of paths.
It can be very destructive.
Exactly. So I was reading this book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yep,
Everybody's heard of this book. It's a fabulous book. But one of the things that he mentions in there is really just this idea that if you know what's driving your emotions, if you know that those emotions exist inside of that suffering, you become a little bit more hopeful
and resilient.
Just based on the idea of understanding where that emotion and that suffering is coming from.
Acknowledgement.
Exactly. That is why we're here. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about what's driving all of our anxiety, our fears, our obligations around money, instead of us just doing what logically makes sense. So the first of our 4 horsemen, as you remember, was obligation. Mm-hmm. And I kind of see this as the fight of the 4 horsemen. It's the one that says, you know what, I'm going to just power through. I'm sure I can just, I'm just going to stay the course. It often does lead to a bit of a martyr mentality because you're like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm meeting my obligations here.
I am not giving up.
No, exactly. I've got this. I will
not quit.
Yeah. The other thing that it often leads to, though, is extreme financial stress. This is the breadwinner's kind of bread and butter.
Yes.
For the 4 horsemen, because if you are in a position where you're earning for your family, you're a parent, you're a single parent, especially.
You're caring for an ill family member.
Exactly. All the people in the sandwich generations right now. This is where you guys live. You live in that state of obligation and stress and where am I going to find the resources? And, it's really crazy because those obligations, that condition of just being morally and legally or somehow feeling that you're bound to do these things or that you owe someone a debt of gratitude or a favor. Okay, those are the things that get us into a lot of trouble. Right. One of the things I used to counsel my clients about was the idea that, hey, if you haven't saved enough for your retirement, you probably shouldn't feel obligated to pay for your kids' college. They could get a loan, and yes, you might feel like you should be obligated to help them, but they have a path forward financially, whereas you can't fund your retirement on a loan.
Yes.
And so it's thinking about your obligations maybe in a different way so that you're not exposing yourself to that martyr syndrome or that huge amount of stress that actually might be better borne by someone else or sharing that load with others.
Well, and it's also going to impact the relationships that you have.
Right.
If you've got that martyr mentality, that will bleed into everything else with family members,
you're not kidding.
Friends,
It's rough. Yeah. And I mean, this also goes together with the whole idea of feeling obligated to lend money or to give money to family members or friends. I feel like we've all kind of been in that position where you feel like, okay, I do feel obligated. This is my duty. Yes, exactly.
And taking that on.
Exactly. That's exactly right. But we've talked before, you and I, about this idea that you have a finite amount of time. Mm-hmm. And when you have a finite amount of time, you don't feel some sort of obligation, or you might feel the obligation, but it is a very clear black and white sort of situation. I have no time to do that. There are only 24 hours in a day.
Yes.
For whatever reason, when it comes to money, we kind of feel like we could stretch beyond the confines of what we actually have. Mm-hmm. There's a magical thinking in that produces more and more stress because as you add the obligations and you're not realistic about what you actually can do financially, it becomes a real drag.
Yeah, where's that money going to come from?
Yeah, well, a lot of times it's you getting yourself more in debt to help someone else.
Been there, done that.
So, it's a heavy thing, but obligation does drive a lot of our financial decisions, and so we really have to pay attention to that. The next of the buckets is fear and denial. And I should go back and just mention at the end of this episode, I'll give you some tips for how to deal with some of these things. So we're not just like digging a hole and then being like, cool, see you later.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
Yeah, exactly. So the next bucket is fear and denial. And I call this the flight mechanism. So the consequences of kind of living in this space is you often have a scarcity mindset. There's ongoing financial insecurity or confusion because you just haven't dealt with what you need to deal with. So this is less like the I'm going to fight through it and more like the I'll just be over here chilling out. I might take a step backwards from any sort of financial decision making as if that's okay. Yeah. And, like it'll catch up with you.
Ignoring the problem.
Not filing your taxes, not doing adequate maintenance on things that you might need to, not checking in on your bank account or knowing when there's something, when you're close to an overdraft fee. I mean, I remember being in college especially and like, I would just like not look. Because then,
as if that's going to make it okay.
You know? I mean, I know I'm overdrawn. I don't want to know how much by. I'm just going to like not look and exist.
And it just spirals.
Yeah, it always spirals. You can't get away from these things. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you know, the crazy thing is short of filing bankruptcy, which actually doesn't eliminate all of your problems depending on who your creditor is. Short of that, there are really no get out of jail free cards when it comes to finance. If you owe somebody some money, they're going to collect on the money and the rest of what's going on in your life is probably going to be held hostage to a certain extent by that indecision or that lack of movement forward. And so if you're looking at your life and you're going, man, I don't know basic things about my financial situation, you're probably living in this fear and denial bucket. Yeah. So, you know, if you're feeling strong emotions caused by anticipating danger, if you're using defense mechanisms, if somebody asks you about money or finances, if it brings up that whole, oh God, I don't want to talk about it, that you're living in this bucket.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, you know, it's not pleasant. And, you know, a lot of times.
You're a trust fund kid.
Right, exactly. I was just going to say, you know, the only way to not live in fear and denial as like your one of these four horsemen is to just have a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can be in denial, but it's probably not going to be a big problem for you.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So the third bucket is guilt and shame. And I associate this with a freeze response. So this is all about avoidance of change. You often are going to have high opportunity costs as a consequence of this because it just keeps you from moving forward. It keeps you from doing the optimal thing for you when you are mired in guilt and shame. And so it can cause feelings of embarrassment, humiliation about doing something wrong or not doing something right. And so you freeze. You don't do anything. Okay. And so a lot of this is very similar to a fear and denial. It might cause some of the same end results or the same outcomes, but it's from a very different place. A lot of times guilt and shame comes more from worthlessness, powerlessness, feeling responsible for or unable to avoid a negative outcome. Feeling unworthy of a positive outcome and just kind of feeling like, you know, maybe it's imposter syndrome. Maybe I shouldn't be able to buy a house. Maybe I will never get that new job. And feeling in that space or feeling like after you have failed in some sort of financial aspect of your life, feeling like you've failed to meet the social or familial expectations put out for you.
Right.
All of that stuff, like, it can keep you from moving forward to do something new. And that can often cause a lot of opportunity costs because you're missing out on the next phase, the next opportunity, the next thing that you could do.
You're just not taking chances anymore because you're just stuck.
Exactly. You're just stuck. And so, as you might imagine, a lot of these four horsemen kind of intermingle and interact. And so a lot of times guilt and shame can lead to fear and denial, or vice versa, or obligation can lead to guilt and shame because you fail to meet your obligation as you see it. So it's really a persistent sort of situation.
It's a cycle.
It is a cycle. It is a cycle. All right. So the last bucket is the pride bucket. And I have associated this with the fawn response. So this is just like you're patting yourself on the back. Things are feeling great. And probably missing a lot of the bigger picture of like, should this even be happening? Should I even have accepted this as what is happening in my life as far as a financial decision?
So, for instance, would this be like, I don't want to admit that I can't really go on this trip with all my friends that can go, but, I'm going to go ahead and go.
Yeah,
because
that is
I will look horrible.
Great example. Yeah. So, a lot of this is feeling just a really deep satisfaction and pleasure with the way that your life is, knowing that you're supposed to be in this space. And a lot of the keeping up with the Joneses type of situation where, you feel like, hey, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be spending this money. Everybody else is spending this money. I should be able to. Or, I'm going to quit my job because my job is actually beneath me and I really should be making X number of dollars. So I'm just going to go ahead and quit my... It's that sort of like, oh my God.
But the blinders are really on.
Yes, exactly. And, all about getting what you deserve and I've done this and this is a great job by me. And failing to look at what's actually occurring, the reality of what's happening for you. So, why do these biases exist and why do they persist?
Tell me.
I have a few ideas, a few thoughts. So I think one of the things is different money mindsets. In a previous episode of the podcast, check it out, we talk about the different money mindsets. And so people may feel strong emotions or value different things or have different priorities when it comes to money. They might really want to maximize all of their opportunities. And so there may be high risk type of people. They're not as risk averse. Or they might be savers and want to make sure that everything is kind of set up and that there's security and things like that.
Well, OCD?
Maybe. Maybe. But, what I like to say about all of our different money mindsets and the way that we look at money is there really is no wrong answer. There's a right answer for you. And there's no right answer for everyone. So we have to kind of adjust our thinking to a certain extent to say, if that person's making that financial decision, that might be the best financial decision for them, might not apply to me. I need to understand what my own money mindsets are, what my own values and priorities are, so I can make the best decision for myself. Because it might not actually be the right decision for everyone else, or their decision might not be the right one for me. So different money mindsets is one reason why these biases kind of exist and persist. And we can start judging other people for making decisions when...
What in the world?
Yeah, and we're not doing that work for ourselves.
Yeah, very true.
So the second reason why I think these biases exist is different lifestyle expectations or spending habits. And that does kind of dovetail off of the money mindsets thing. But this is really more about having different values and beliefs around how they earn or spend money, around how people make their money, and what they actually will spend it on. So one of the money mindsets is really to be more interested in kind of like, I'm price inelastic. I really don't care how much I spend as long as I'm getting a good quality product. You know, those types of people, right?
Yeah.
And then there are people who are like, I don't care what quality is as long as it does the job. And if I can get it dirt cheap, that's great. I'm in. And it could break tomorrow.
Like a good bargain.
Exactly. A good bargain. And there are people, and neither one of those things, there are pros and cons, right, for both stance. But you want to be in a position where you understand yourself and you understand the people around you, especially the people who are going to be making financial decisions with you. Because I can tell you, if you have different lifestyle expectations than the other people who are also responsible for spending or earning and spending your money, and you're sharing the...
Listen up, couples.
Yeah, exactly. Two divorced ladies here talking. But I do think that, like, this is the financial conversation that you're supposed to have before you get married, right?
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing as you would with your just general life values. You need to understand what the expectations are for your lifestyle and your spending habits. It does you no good if one of you is like, I'm good with ramen. I would do that every night. And the other one, and I'm not talking about like delicious ramen. I'm talking about like
about the
in little packages with the
ramen
that you
put in the water.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're fancy if you're boiling it on the stove instead of microwave it. Yes, that ramen. One of you might be good with that, and one of you might really legitimately want a $300 dinner at least once a week, and you enjoy treating yourself that way. There are definitely things to be said as far as whether or not you can afford either one of those things, whether they fit in your budget. But let's say both things fit in your budget. It's really important to have that conversation about lifestyle and your expectations and how you plan on spending your money, and what you would prioritize. Do you prioritize the $300 dinner, or would you much rather have some other experience? Knowing those things about yourself and about your partner is super important. So, okay, the next thing is income and power dynamics. So people may disagree about who has the decision-making power or whose priorities matter most. And so this is definitely for couples, but it's also for family members, friends, really anybody that you have a financial relationship with. This comes into play because even a creditor might disagree about whose priorities matter most.
Very true.
Right? And so you have to have that kind of sense for yourself, again, because it will help you make better financial decisions. But if you have an outlook in your life that, it doesn't really matter if I have debt somewhere, versus I hate being in debt. I want to pay cash for everything. I mean, that sort of is part of an income and power dynamic because maybe you want the control. Maybe you want to be able to kind of write your own destiny. You don't want to have any sort of debt, or you don't want to be beholden to anyone. Same thing inside of a relationship. If you are the breadwinner and you're used to making your own financial decisions, if at some point you end up partnered with someone, or you have a family member who has some sort of influence over your financial decision making, understanding who actually is in charge, who has the final say on a decision, and
how to compromise.
How to set boundaries, that is super important. And it's one reason not looking at those things, not understanding that people might have different versions of what that power dynamic looks like or should look like, makes us susceptible to those biases we were talking about.
Makes sense.
Okay, the last kind of reason why I think these biases exist is lack of information and understanding. This might be the biggest thing. Information and incentives have a lot to do with how we make our purchasing decisions, our financial decisions. And so many people have concerns about knowledge gaps in managing debt, budgeting, other fundamental financial management skills. And that obviously lends itself to many of these biases. If you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so even just knowing that you might not know is why this podcast exists, just to kind of raise the question of,
do I have all the information I need?
Exactly.
Or is there another angle here?
Exactly. Who could I ask? What research should I be doing? Oh, I have a tendency to just stick with the status quo. Let me see if there's something else I should be looking at right now. Okay. So that leads perfectly into the final piece here, which is the what you can do. So I said towards the beginning, like, I wasn't going to just leave you guys hanging. I wanted to make sure that we had some practical tips. So what you could do to kind of alleviate some of these biases in your life, or alleviate how much of an impact they have on your decision making, so that you can make a bit of a more rational and empowered choices in your financial life. So what you can do, you can communicate. You can discuss your financial goals and aspirations with people you trust and be truthful about your challenges and your concerns.
Like your financial planner or a family member or your spouse.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So many people don't talk about it, even with people they trust. And that's a mistake, because the more that you talk about it with people you trust, the more you can start seeing, oh, maybe I'm just thinking, maybe that's just me like thinking that way, or maybe that's me thinking that way. But yes, there's a whole other perspective that I've missed here.
Yeah.
And just being open to receiving feedback, but also communicating in a real way about your fears, what you feel obligated to do and not do, what you feel guilty about, what you've done. We're going to talk at some point in this podcast. It's like a really hot topic for me, financial infidelity.
Ooh.
And that is when you don't communicate your financial decisions to somebody who you are supposed to be accountable to.
Wow.
And it's really hard to get that conversation started sometimes, but it's really important, because if you're intentionally, as with financial infidelity, or even unintentionally keeping things from someone who has a vested interest in your finances, that's a problem. It's not good. And it really does deplete your own financial wellness, because you feel like you're burdened with a truth that hasn't been communicated.
Right.
And
it's that monkey on your back.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you're communicating about your financial goals and your values, you're probably doing a great job on the road to financial wellness. So the next thing is create a budget. This is a great one, because nobody ever wants to create a budget. And I totally get it. But a budget is boundaries. A budget is your financial and even your broader life priorities on paper. And I think it's so valuable to actually make one, because it does show you, oh my God, if I was spending 50% of my income, and I'm just throwing that out there, but if I was spending 50% of my income on something and I wasn't getting joy from that, or I realized, man, I really need to make a change because this is an essential, but that's way too much of my budget to be spending on it. Mm-hmm. I need to make a change. I need to get a roommate because this house is too expensive, or I need to sell my car because I can't really afford to drive. I should be doing X, Y, and Z instead. Carpooling, public transport. Creating a budget just lets you know the lay of the land.
Yeah.
And it allows you to reset your boundaries and priorities accordingly. If you don't have something like that on paper, it's really difficult to kind of process what you are prioritizing financially.
Yeah. It brings everything to light, makes everything clear.
Exactly.
And
if you're not earning enough or you're spending too much or, you realize, oh my gosh, like I didn't even budget for this thing, but I do it all the time. I don't budget for that dinner out that I have every Friday with my friends, but I do it every Friday with my friends. That should tell you, okay, I actually am not realistic. I'm in a little bit of denial here, and I need to adjust myself accordingly. I will say the best tip I have for how to create a budget in the first place is to track your expenses. No, nobody likes saying that, but I mean, with everything digital right now, it's so easy.
Yes.
Just after a month, go online, look at your bank statements, look at your credit card statements, and see all the things that you spent your money on. And put it in a budget table as if this was just the way your life works.
Yeah.
And, for big expenses, you got to divide those by 12 so you can make a monthly budget. But the whole point is just to get a lay of the land, just to bring it to light and get a picture of what you're actually prioritizing versus what you might need to shift to prioritize.
Right. And then also, I know that with my bank, I'm able to, it'll tell you how much you spend in relation to how much you make. And like it will categorize, like what types of expenses they are.
Exactly.
So there are lots of tools.
Lots
available.
of tools, and it will help you really understand, the categories. That's almost every single financial institution has something like that. And so you're absolutely right. Take advantage of those to help you create your budget. But get something on paper. Even if you're not following it, to be honest, I don't even need you to follow the budget so much as have it on paper and understand what you are actually prioritizing so you can maybe set some new, healthier boundaries. Okay, the third thing that you could do is be empathetic. This is really hard, and it's supposed to be hard because, as I said before, finances is something you're not taught in school, but that you have to do all the time. We're always making these decisions.
Every day.
Yes. So let's avoid criticism and judgment of yourself and of others, and make a point to consider those alternative points of view, kind of like we were saying earlier. And then the next thing, the fourth thing, set aside some time. So schedule some regular check-ins to review your finances and to adjust to new realities as needed. If you've gone through like a major transition in your life or a major something has happened to you, it's super important to take a step back and just go, okay, how is this going to affect my finances and my financial situation?
So like even, would you say like every Sunday, I'm going to sit down and just see where I am? Or, how frequently?
Exactly. Well, let's see. I think if you are checking your bank accounts, your bank statements, and just kind of understanding generally where you are once a week, that's plenty. I do. You definitely want to check things like your credit reports or things like that, at least annually. I think probably more often than that. I mean, this is a fast-moving world. Yeah, and that can help protect you from fraud and all sorts of things. So, your credit reports, your credit scores, things like that, I would do every quarter myself.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're checking in on a weekly basis with your bank account and just reviewing where you're at for the month, that's plenty of time, or that's plenty of frequency. And what I typically do is every time I get a paycheck, it's really easy to, when I get paid, I can look and see, okay, I need to obviously pay all my bills if I don't already have it already automatically happening. And it also helps me kind of reset everything going forward. So I can reconcile what I spent the last 2 weeks with what I'm going to do going forward.
Yes.
And so for me, it's every couple of weeks. I think once a week, especially since you can stay consistent with it.
Yes.
For some people is a perfect frequency.
Okay.
All right. And then the last thing that I think you could do to just manage some of these emotions is to find a system and use financial tools. So we just talked about there are a lot of things built in, but I'm just going to challenge everybody today to find one app, one article, one resource that helps you build a system or develop some way of tracking your financial situation, and just focus on that. As you start utilizing whatever system or tools that you've got, you'll start noticing things that you'd like to see or that you're curious about or that are helpful to you. And then you can expand your knowledge and your reach to other tools that might help assist you as well.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, just take a little bite because there are so many tools and
Baby
apps
steps.
and this and that. Yes,
Baby
exactly.
steps.
So I will throw one out there that I love, speaking of credit scores and reports, and that's Credit Karma. I love Credit Karma.
Me too.
So that's one where I weirdly will go on and I could be on there every day and find it fascinating.
It's so weird.
So, but that Credit Karma is free to sign up, of course, and it can really help you understand what your credit looks like, what your financial situation looks like, and how you appear to really anybody who is going to lend you money, but then also it helps you gauge a little bit better, I think, how you're spending your money, especially if you do have credit cards. If you see those balances ticking up and up and up, and it's not coming down, even if you pay off your card every month, having a higher and a higher and a higher bar to reach and making sure you pay that off is concerning. You should probably pay attention because it probably means that you might be overspending in some places or your financial situation has changed and you probably need to take a closer look at what's going on. Maybe you just moved and you've run up the credit cards, but it's going to be fine. Or maybe you've gotten into a situation like that couple who's making $400,000 and they're like, I'll just buy a little more. I'll just buy a little more. It's find a system, use financial tools, check in regularly. Don't think that it's the type of thing where you can set it and forget it because usually that's a recipe for living in that fear and denial space instead of moving yourself forward toward a better financial picture for yourself.
Yes. Great advice. I love it.
Excellent. Well, I am so excited. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
Listeners, if you're interested to hear more, please like and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a thing. I will be back next week with another episode. And until then, have a great rest of your week.
Bye, guys.